This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
A Palestinian suicide bomber blew himself up in the Israeli city of Eilat, killing 3 Israelis and wounding several others. The Jerusalem Brigades, the military wing for the Islamic Jihad, and the Army of Believers, a group that is affiliated with the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, claimed responsibility for the attack. According to both groups, the suicide bomber, a Palestinian from the town of Beit Lahia in the northern Gaza Strip, infiltrated Eilat from Jordan. They said that preparations for the attack took nearly 7 months.
A suicide bomb attack has rocked the city of Eilat, the first attack against Israel in 9 months. A Palestinian suicide bomber blew himself up in a bakery in Israel's southern resort town of Eilat, killing and wounding several Israelis. According to medical sources, some of the victims have sustained serious injuries. This is the first suicide attack since April 2006, when a suicide bomber struck in Tel Aviv, killing 11 Israelis and wounding nearly 60 others.
A suicide bomber blew himself up in a bakery, killing and wounding several people. We are investigating the incident. We are still examining the type of explosives that were used in the attack.
2 armed Palestinian factions claimed responsibility for the attack.
The Palestinian resistance carried out a martyred operation dubbed Ice Meltdown. The Jerusalem Brigades and the Army of Believers that is affiliated with the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade claimed responsibility for the Eilat martyred attack.
Meanwhile, the Israeli security forces, which heightened security and sealed off the area, did not dismiss reports that other suspects may still be at large in the city. Israeli cities and towns were also put on high alert in anticipation of further attacks. Palestinians fear that Israel will respond militarily under the pretext of pursuing wanted fugitives.
We are now joined in the studio by our colleague, Walid Al-Umari, the chief of Al Jazeera Bureau in Jerusalem. Walid, in your opinion, how can this attack affect Israel's internal policy, considering that it was carried out during a period of growing scandals against the leadership in Israel? In addition, how does this attack reflect on the Palestinian internal fighting?
برئيس أركان جديد قوي للجيش الإسرائيلي هم سيحاولون الاعتماد على القيام بعملية.
With regards to Israel, the leadership by and large is very weak. It's trying to hide behind a strong military leader, such as the new Army's chief of staff. The Israeli government will respond either by targeting and demolishing the homes of the suicide bombers, as it has done in previous incidents, or by carrying out an assassination campaign against prominent leaders or activists from the Jerusalem and Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades. Both groups, just like other Palestinian factions, have been targeted in the West Bank by Israel. However, it's not expected that Israel will carry out a wide-scale military offensive operation in the Palestinian territories. 3 weeks ago, during a parliamentary session, the head of Israel's military intelligence said that his government should not carry out a military operation in response to what he described as Palestinian provocations, referring to cross-border rocket attacks from Gaza, because such an operation may lead to Palestinian unity. Contrary to public belief, Israel will not carry out a wide-scale military operation in the Palestinian territories. Israel may hit specific targets or may carry out a limited military operation. According to Palestinian sources, the attack was carried out in order to unite the nation, showing that the enemy is Israel and not the Palestinian people. The Eilat attack was intended to redirect Palestinian efforts to stop the internal fighting. It also intends to embarrass Palestinian rivals and make them stop fighting. The Eilat attack attack, which is the first since April 2006, is not expected to have great repercussions on the Palestinian territories. However, it may put an end to the cooling-off period, which was agreed upon by all Palestinian factions, the government and the presidential office. According to the cooling-off period, Palestinians are to refrain from carrying out suicide attacks in Israel in order to help create a better situation for themselves.
في قلب إسرائيل في محاولات لتهيئة الظروف لما هو أفضل.
A high security alert throughout the country today following this morning's terror attack in Eilat, in which 3 people were killed. This was the first ever suicide bombing attack in the southern resort town. 3 Palestinian terror groups claimed responsibility. The bomber was identified as 23-year-old Mohammed al-Saksak. The terrorist mother said she knew about her son's plans and felt happy for him. Interior Security Minister Avi Dichter said al-Saksak came from Gaza via Sinai and not through Jordan, as claimed by the Islamic Jihad. IBA's Leah Stern reports on the terror attack in Eilat.
The first suicide bombing in Israel in 9 months struck an unlikely place, the resort city of Eilat. Shortly before 10 a.m., a suicide bomber blew himself up inside the Lechamim bakery in the older Isidore residential neighborhood. Roy Rosenfeld, the spokesman for Magen David Adom in the Negev region, who was at the scene minutes after today's attack, told IBA News that the many tourists in Eilat were nowhere near the site of the bombing.
The bombing took place in a part of town who is not usually populated by tourists. It's an older part of town, and it's not near the hotels or the big shopping centers. It's not an easy day. It's a hard day. It's the first suicide bombing, like you said. It feels like the ball finally got to our coast.
3 people were killed in the attack. Alongside the bodies of the victims were shattered glass and loaves of bread in the first suicide bombing in Eilat's history. Residents in the area, many of them elderly, were in a state of panic. One of those residents, Benny Mazgini, was shocked when the explosion shook his apartment. Minutes earlier, he had called local police to report a suspicious man dressed in a black coat carrying a bag. But by the time the police arrived on the scene, the bomber had already detonated.
Israel is under constant terror attacks and terror threats. We are compelled to be on guard against such attacks, and we are continuously doing all efforts to stop any such attacks.
Palestinian groups, the Islamic Jihad, the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, and an unknown group called the Army of Believers claim joint responsibility for the bombing. Police and Shin Bet forces are currently looking into the possibility that the bomber had infiltrated Israel via Egypt, which he reached through tunnels dug under the Gaza Strip's border with Egypt. They have detained a man who they believe drove the terrorists to the scene of the attack in Eilat. Security sources believe that the bomber had intended to detonate his explosive belt in a more crowded location, but carried out the attack out of fear of being caught. This is Leah Stern for IBA News.
Prime Minister Ehud Olmert says that the recent relative quiet in Israel was an illusion, and security forces have foiled numerous terrorist attacks over the past several weeks. Addressing the Kadima faction in the Knesset this afternoon, Olmert sent condolences to the families of the victims and said Israel would draw the appropriate conclusions from today's bombing attack. Defense Minister Amir Peretz this afternoon convened the country's top security officials for urgent consultations. Earlier, Peretz said the Eilat bombing was a serious escalation and that extremist Palestinian groups are doing everything in their power to violate the ceasefire. Condemnations of the Eilat attack have come from the United States and France.
Ordinary Palestinians who viewed their national unity as a source of pride for many years are astonished by the ongoing internal fighting in Gaza. Palestinians in the West Bank are afraid that the internal fighting in Gaza between Fateh and Hamas would spread to their areas and pray that God spare them these internal divisions. Our correspondent Majid Saeed surveyed public opinion in Ramallah and provided us with the following report.
ماجد سعيد جس نبض الشارع في رام الله ووافانا بهذا التقرير.
Who is in charge today? It seems that the two major Palestinian factions, Fateh and Hamas, are trying to find the answer by using the language of bullets. Lashes spread to the streets, despite hopes that the two factions would use dialogue as a way to resolve their differences. Once again, Gaza is drowning in blood, but this time, Palestinians are fighting Palestinians. The two movements understand that no one can win this battle, but they are trying to twist each other's arms and impose their own agenda.
What we are witnessing today is the result of the failure of political leaders to form a national unity government. The process was needlessly extended for 6 months, which means that we lack competent leaders and men. The ones who are running the show are immature individuals who lack experience in politics and the use of weapons.
The ongoing internal fighting in Gaza is not the first of its kind between the two major Palestinian factions, but this time, however, there are widespread consensus among all Palestinians, even ordinary citizens, that the decision to end this internal fighting has not been made yet. There's a belief that the individuals who are using the weapons are only tools of foreign powers looking to serve their agendas.
There is foreign intervention from the US and others, including some Arab countries.
The American policy of Condoleezza Rice has caused what is happening in the Middle East. Rice and Bush have a certain plan to eliminate the Palestinian resistance, Hamas, by entangling it in the political process through elections. At the same time, they are supporting a coup d'etat against the government to create a civil war.
Faced with this reality, Palestinians fear that the internal fighting would spread from Gaza to the West Bank. Some indication that this may have already happened is the kidnappings of Hamas members in Nablus, which caused modest demonstrations calling for unity and an end to the internal division. Although the Palestinians completely reject the internal fighting in Gaza, a mere rejection, however, is not enough to end what is happening. The lack of reactions have been justified by the frustration of the Palestinian citizens with their political leaders and the belief that the two opponents do not have good intentions.
Today is Ashura, the most important Shiite religious holiday, which was marked by dangerous security incidents. This celebration, as usual, was accompanied by a security mobilization throughout the Shiite areas. Security was under control in Karbala. However, Najaf was transformed into a battle scene. Yesterday, the city witnessed the most violent clashes between Iraqi and U.S. forces, and the soldiers of heaven lost 300 of their members in their first appearance on the Iraqi battlefield. Muna Abu Diab reports.
لعلها صدفة أم رصد عن سابق تصميم أن تسرق الصور الأكثر.
One can't tell if it was a coincidence or pre-planned that some of the most sensitive images about the latest events in Iraq have been captured by mobile phone cameras. A few moments of fighting were broadcast from inside the battlefield, fighting which certainly shook the ground and lit the skies of Najaf. The remaining long hours of the raging battles are left for predictions, questions, and cameras equipped with long-distance lenses. The fighting erupted here in the markets of the Zarqa area on the outskirts of Najaf. A security campaign was conducted here by the Iraqi forces backed by American air cover. They raided the holdout of a group which calls itself the Soldiers from Heaven, aiming to eliminate it and its plans. The Iraqi forces say that they discovered these plans a few days ago when they arrested 2 members of the Soldiers from Heaven, who gave them details about the group's plans. It appears that the group was planning to attack religious Shiite leaders on the holiday of Ashura.
الدينية الشيعية في يوم ذكرى عاشوراء. هوية وخفايا أتباع هؤلاء تبقى بعيدة عن الجزم.
Information about the identities and the nature of this remains uncertain. An Iraqi government source confirmed that the group is nothing more than a Shiite militia headed by Abu Qamar al-Yamani, who claims that he is one of the emissaries of the awaited Imam Mahdi sent to kill Shiite religious leaders and expedite the reappearance of the Mahdi. Another source said that there are Afghans within the ranks of the group who also have documented ties with armed Sunni factions. The Iraqi government did not go into details about this information, focusing rather on the number of casualties in the battlefield, including the more than 300 fighters killed in one day. Only 3 Iraqi policemen were killed, as well as 2 Americans, when their plane crashed during the confrontations. Certainly to the Iraqi forces, these numbers are a long-awaited success. They hope that these numbers will allow the black banners of the Ashura celebration to remain without being transformed into black shrouds for new funerals.
تحويل سواد احتفالات عاشوراء اليوم إلى سواد لعزاء جديد.
Efforts to reach a breakthrough in the Lebanese political crisis have not produced results yet, as the Hezbollah-led opposition has insisted on a 1/3 veto power, a demand strongly refused by the government majority. The Lebanese daily An-Nahar reported sources today as saying that the opposition has renewed calls for a broader cabinet on the 19+11 formula, refusing the neutral cabinet minister in the 19+10+1 formula. This as Beirut awaits the return of Arab League chief Amr Moussa, while Saudi-Iranian talks are still ongoing in a bid to avoid any further escalation on the Lebanese scene. More with Yumna Tayara.
At a time when Beirut was still witnessing a race between diplomacy and possibilities of escalation, the weekend did not temper the strained climate, especially that political mediation has not produced results yet. The pan-Arab daily Al Hayat quoted high-level political sources in the opposition and the government as saying that the Iranian Saudi teams met yesterday in Tehran to pursue their attempts to avoid any escalation on the Lebanese scene and a deterioration of the Sunni-Shiite relations. These attempts were launched by the head of the Saudi National Security Council, Prince Bandar bin Sultan bin Abdulaziz, and the Iranian negotiator Ali Larijani. On a parallel note, Prince Bandar headed to Washington yesterday as talks emerged about widening the scope of the Saudi contacts in a bid to provide the appropriate atmosphere to relaunch the initiative of Arab League chief Amr Moussa. Ministerial and parliamentary sources meanwhile stressed that Moussa would be ready to return to Lebanon on Wednesday. Al Hayat also quoted a minister as saying that the Saudi-Iranian talks were looking to offer a compromise that would be implemented before February 14, the second-year commemoration of the assassination of Premier Rafiq al-Hariri. In the same context, the Lebanese daily An-Nahar quoted high-level sources in the majority as saying that nothing new was witnessed on the level of regional mediations, including the Saudi-Iranian one. It added that the opposition became hostage of its own stubbornness and was not able to provide any positive step. Meanwhile, sources in Hezbollah told An-Nahar that the group was not informed of any new steps regarding the political context aimed at diffusing the tension. It added that Hezbollah was aware that there was a Saudi attempt to hold a meeting between House Speaker Nabih Berri and Premier Fuad al-Sannura. The sources also stressed that the possibility of a meeting between head of the future bloc in parliament MP Saad al-Hariri and Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah was not proposed, pointing however that the group has already regarded it as unlikely.
Hezbollah leader Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah accused Lebanese government figures of stirring turmoil between Sunnis and Shiite Muslims after deadly riots swept the capital. In a televised address, Nasrallah said he rejected sectarian conflict, civil war, and that Hezbollah would not aim its weapons at anyone because this would be serving Israel. He called on the courts to investigate the causes of the clashes on Thursday and execute those who used arms against fellow Lebanese citizens. Nasrallah also condemned U.S. President George W. Bush for saying that Hezbollah was as great a danger to his nation as Al-Qaeda. Nasrallah said Bush's comments did not arise from Shiite Muslim Hezbollah's role in the latest political crisis in Lebanon, but attacked Hezbollah because it stood by the Lebanese people and because it was fighting Israel.
انتهى في موريتانيا الأجل القانوني لتسلم
In Mauritania, the legal deadline to nominate presidential candidates has passed. The number of nominees has reached 21 in the midst of rumors and fear of election postponement. The elections were initially scheduled to take place on March 11th.
The deadline to run for the highest post in this country has passed. Serious candidates find themselves surrounded by fear and hope.
I hope this election will be honest and that it will reflect the choice of the Mauritanian people.
There is fear of postponement and fraud and hope for unbiased outcomes. However, the average citizen finds himself confused and unable to recognize the good from the bad amongst this huge number of candidates.
So many candidates confuse the average citizen and the people overall. However, this multiplicity is considered a step toward democracy in Mauritania. The law with regard to presidential nomination falls short on providing clear guidelines to those who are interested in running.
The influence of tribal and clan relations also contributes to the uncertainty of the political situation in a country that finds itself new to the idea of nationhood. What then of democracy?
Most people in this great Republic of Mauritania pledge their loyalty to their tribes. That is because the idea of a government and a nation was only introduced to us in 1960. Democracy is at its infancy and the concept of political parties is new.
The presidential elections come at a time when the country has been going through a stage of polarization, which fluctuates depending on the backgrounds and ideologies of different candidates.
Political orientations in Mauritania are becoming obvious. There is a left and a right wing. The rightists support the power of the clans and the elites and hope to maintain power in the government. The leftist party aims at making dramatic changes within the society. They have an agenda and are also hoping to win seats in the government to execute their plans.
Here in Mauritania, the deadline for the presidential nomination has passed. There are many candidates and only one post.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Hello and welcome to Drama Network News. I'm Anapad. Today, January 29th, coincides with the 9th day of the lunar month of Muharram, known as Tasu'a. The occasion is designated to commemorate the valor and devotions of Imam Hussein's brother, Hazrat Abul Fazl Abbas, in an unequal battle with the tyrants of the time in Karbala in the 7th century AD. On behalf of my colleagues at Drama English News, I extend condolences to all viewers on this sad occasion. People all across Iranian cities, towns and villages mourn Tasu'a, which commemorates Hazrat Abbas, the brother of Imam Hussein, the third Shiite Imam, who stood up to the tyrannical and corrupt rulers of the time some 14 centuries ago, beating on their chest and rhyme as a conventional sign of mourning for Imam Hussein, known as the Lord of Martyrs, and 72 of his loyal companions. The faithful took to the streets in droves and flocked to the religious sites. Shiites in other countries also turned out for lamentation services, marking the occasion of Tasu'a. Morning processions came to a peak in the Iraqi holy city of Karbala, where the third Shiite Imam and the grandson of Islam's prophet is laid to rest.
Once again, the controversy over whether to preserve or demolish old Islamic landmarks in Saudi Arabia has been brought back to center stage. This news came after the discovery of a mosque more than 1,300 years old in the holy city of Mecca, prompting yet another controversy among Muslim scholars and archaeologists.
Several religious scholars and archaeologists are exerting efforts to prevent the demolition of an old mosque believed to be 1,350 years old. The mosque was recently discovered in the city of Mina near Mecca during the expansion of Jumrata Bridge, which is used by Muslim pilgrims to throw pebbles or jumrat at a structure resembling the devil. Some believe that the mosque was the place where the second allegiance was signed, an agreement that many believe was one of the most important events marking the birth of Islam.
Generally speaking, this place has played a central role in the history of Islamic civilization. In this mosque, an accord was signed between the Prophet Muhammad, peace and prayers be upon him, and a group of his followers, also called the Ansars or supporters from Medina. This accord paved the way for the Hijrah, or the migration of Muhammad and his followers from Mecca to Medina.
Some non-Muslim scholars who fear that the mosque may be transformed into a place for illegal practices do not believe that the mosque was established in the same place where the Prophet Muhammad had met with a group of followers from Medina. On the other hand, some Muslim scholars confirm that the mosque was the place where the second allegiance was signed between the Prophet and the Ansars, calling on the government to preserve it.
This mosque, even if it was not the Mosque of Allegiance, is an important historical place that should be preserved. Why do we need to demolish it? This is not right. It is absurd to suggest that we need to demolish it because some fear that it may be used for unlawful activities.
The mosque, which is uncovered from the top, has two spacious hallways, measuring 23 arms length each. It is 14 arms length wide, and it has 4 doors, 2 at the northern and 2 at the southern sides. It contains historical features and material evidence, suggesting that it had played an important role by hosting the second allegiance, which many believe paved the way to the birth of the Islamic civilization.
The evidence found on the structure of the mosque may help us find the date it was constructed. As you can see, this building block shows the first time the mosque was built, which is believed to go back to the era of Abbasid Caliph Abu Ja'far al-Mansur.
The controversy about what some have described as the Mosque of Allegiance comes in the context of yet a bigger controversy, which has been increasingly gaining momentum in Saudi Arabia for decades. A controversy about whether the government should demolish or preserve several old religious landmarks in Mecca and Medina. This news came in the aftermath of the foundation of the so-called religious tourism industry, which many hope will provide more job opportunities to Saudi citizens. The expansion of the Jumrat Bridge has led to the discovery of this historical mosque, promoting a strong controversy among Saudis. While many believe that this mosque was indeed the Mosque of Allegiance and it should be preserved, a few believe otherwise.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.